Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast. Ready to dive into something really fascinating today.
Always up for a good deep dive. What have we got?
Well, we're going to be winding back the clock, so to speak, to explore the history of clocks.
Clocks. Now that's a topic with some real depth to it, more than people might think.
Yeah, exactly. From ancient sundials to, all the incredible timekeeping tech we have today. It's a story of, human ingenuity and our obsession with measuring time.
Absolutely. And it's amazing what the different ways people have kept time tell us about their values, their priorities in different eras, like what was important to them.
Okay, so let's go way back to the beginning. I mean, before clocks as we know them even existed, how did people even, wrap their heads around the concept of time?
Well, long before mechanical clocks came along, humans were already paying attention to the natural world, like the sun rising and setting, the cycles of the moon, the seasons changing.
Right, those natural rhythms.
Exactly. Those provided the earliest kind of frameworks for understanding time.
So it was all about observation. What were some of those early tools people used to track time more specifically?
Well, you've got the classic sundial, of course. Might seem simple, but sundials are pretty ingenious, relying on the sun's position to cast a shadow, right?
Oh, like those things you see in gardens sometimes.
Yeah. But sundials are actually used for centuries, even alongside those advanced timekeeping methods that came later. And get this, a sundial's accuracy actually varies depending on where you are and what time of year it is.
Why is that?
Because the angle of the sun changes, you see.
Ah, so it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It had to be, calibrated for a specific place.
Precisely. And that tells us something about the folks who used them. They had a really good grasp of astronomy and how celestial bodies move.
That's pretty impressive.
Mm.
Now, what about measuring, specific amounts of time passing? Were there tools for that before clocks as we know them came along?
You're thinking of tools like the hourglass. The point wasn't to tell you exactly what time it was. It was more about measuring a set interval. And what's remarkable is that hourglass principle. We still use it.
Really?
Think about timers on your phone, kitchen timers, all sorts of things. They're all based on that same ancient idea.
It's funny how these ideas kind of stick around.
Hmm.
But let's move on to actual clocks. I've read that water clocks were a really big deal for a long time.
Oh yeah, water clocks, or clepsydras, ruled the world of timekeeping for millennia. They were amazingly accurate, especially given the tech they had back then.
Huh. I mean, the idea of a water clock seems pretty simple when you think about it. What were some of the, design challenges in making them actually accurate?
Well, the basic idea is, water flowing from one container to another at a controlled rate, but different civilizations came up with some pretty clever designs.
Like what kind of designs? Give me an example of a water clock that was really impressive.
Okay, let's go back to ancient Athens, around the 1st century BC. There's this incredible structure called the Tower of the Winds. Amazing architecture and engineering.
I'm picturing it now.
And it housed this huge clepsydra along with a bunch of sundials on the outside walls. It was kind of an early clock tower, function and architectural grandeur all in one.
So it wasn't just telling time, it was a statement piece too.
Absolutely. And it shows how different cultures incorporated timekeeping into their societies in really unique ways. And speaking of pushing boundaries, Archimedes?
Oh yeah, of course. One of the greats.
Well, he's actually credited with inventing the first known geared clock. And get this, it was water-powered.
Seriously. So gears weren't like a medieval invention.
Nope. Archimedes' clock from the 3rd century BC shows just how ingenious ancient Greek engineers were. And it wasn't just any clock, it was a cuckoo clock.
A cuckoo clock, that's amazing, with water wheels and everything.
Yeah, exactly. It really captures the imagination, right? And the innovations didn't stop there. Fast forward to 11th century China, and you have Susong's astronomical clock tower in Kaifeng.
Another clock tower.
Oh, this one was a marvel. Driven by a water wheel and an early escapement mechanism, it shows how precise water-powered clocks could get.
Wow, it's incredible how different cultures came up with such different styles.
Absolutely. These examples really challenge the idea that technological progress always goes in a straight line.
True. Okay, before we move on to mechanical clocks, there's one more water clock inventor I got to ask about. Al-Jazari. His creations sound almost too fantastical to be real.
Oh, Al-Jazari's work was incredible. We're talking 12th century. He designed elephant clocks, castle clocks, incorporated intricate water mechanisms, and, well, basically robots.
Wow, robots.
Yeah, automata. These clocks were more than just functional. They were like works of art, statements of status.
So they were designed to impress people as much as to tell time.
Exactly. They reflected the values and ambitions of the time, like a showcase of the ingenuity and artistry of Islamic civilization.
It really is amazing how clocks, even from the earliest times, were more than just timekeeping devices.
Right. They were statements of cultural identity, of technological skill, you name it.
Okay, before we get into the world of mechanical clocks, I want to remind our listeners to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of our deep dive into the history of clocks. We'll be right back after a quick message.
See you in a bit. Welcome back. Ready for more clock talk?
Absolutely, I'm hooked. So we left off with those incredible water clocks. What happened next in our clock journey?
Well, let's head over to Europe in the 13th century. It's where we find a real turning point. The shift from water-powered to fully mechanical clocks.
A world without water clocks. That's hard to imagine. But why the change?
It all started with the invention of the Verge escapement.
Verge escapement. That sounds pretty techy. What exactly is it?
It's kind of like a seesaw that controls how energy is released from a falling weight.
A seesaw inside a clock.
Yeah, it allowed clocks to be powered by falling weights instead of water.
Uh-huh. So no more need to be near water sources.
Exactly. Clocks could be built pretty much anywhere. Freedom.
So what were these early mechanical clocks used for? Was it like telling time for daily life?
Not quite. Back then, they were mainly for signaling. Think church bells announcing services or town clocks marking important events.
Interesting. So not so much about personal timekeeping then.
Right, and they were also used for astronomical modeling, showing the movements of planets and stuff.
So connecting with the cosmos rather than our daily schedules.
Exactly, and some of these astronomical clocks were insanely complex.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Take Richard of Wallingford in England and Giovanni da Dondi in Italy, both in the 14th century. They built these astronomical clocks that were, well, basically marvels of engineering.
Well, what made them so special?
Picture multiple dials tracking the sun, moon, planets, even predicting eclipses, all these gears, moving parts. It's mind-blowing even today.
Wow, that level of precision back then is just incredible. Do any of these amazing clocks still exist?
Sadly, no, but we have the detailed descriptions and designs they left behind, and you know what's really cool?
What?
People have actually built replicas based on those old documents.
Wow, that's dedication. So from sundials to water clocks to these intricate mechanical clocks, it's amazing how far clocks came.
It is, but the story doesn't stop there. The next chapter is all about improving accuracy.
Making those clocks even more precise. Got
Yeah.
it.
Early mechanical clocks, oh, they had their quirks. When spring-driven clocks came along in the 15th century, keeping them running at a steady pace was a challenge.
I see. So it's like a wind-up toy that slows down as the spring unwinds.
Exactly. But a brilliant Swiss clockmaker, Jos Bergi, came to the rescue.
Tell me about him.
He developed things like the stack-freed and the fusee, which helped regulate the power from a spring.
Stack-freed and fusee. I'm intrigued. What are those?
The stack-freed involved a special type of spring, while the fusee was this cone-shaped pulley. Together, they made sure the clock got a constant flow of energy.
Clever. And how accurate were his clocks?
They could keep time to within a minute per day. For the 16th century, that's
A
amazing.
minute a day. That's pretty impressive. But then I'm guessing came the game changer. The pendulum.
You got it. Christian Huygens, a Dutch scientist, figured out the connection between a pendulum's length and its swing time in 1656. That led to the first pendulum clock.
Ah, the pendulum. Simple, yet so elegant.
Totally. And it revolutionized accuracy. And you know what came out of that?
I think I do. The grandfather clock.
Bingo. The long case clock, with its elegant design, was specifically made to house the pendulum.
And around this time, clocks also got more, well, detailed. Did minute and second hands come into the picture?
Yes. Thanks to guys like Daniel Quare and Thomas Tompion, minute hands became standard in the late 17th century, and then the second hand followed soon after.
Wow. So clocks became even more precise and could show time in more detail.
It's incredible how seemingly small innovations could have such a big impact on how we measure and experience time.
Totally. It's like every little detail added another layer of precision and information. Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast.
And welcome back to the fascinating world of clocks.
So we've seen clocks evolve from those early sundials to these super intricate mechanical wonders. What comes next?
Well, now we're heading into a time of, big exploration and seafaring, and clocks took on a whole new importance.
Right, because knowing the time accurately at sea,
Mm-hmm.
that was crucial for navigation, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was a matter of life or death out there on the open ocean.
And this is where the story of the marine chronometer comes in, right?
Exactly. Before GPS and all that, figuring out a ship's longitude at sea. That was a huge problem.
Yeah, I've heard about the longitude problem. It stumped sailors for ages.
It did. You see, to figure out longitude, you needed a clock that could keep time perfectly, even with the ship rocking, temperature changes, all that.
Sounds like an impossible task.
It was a huge challenge. But along came John Harrison, the self-taught English clockmaker. He spent decades trying to create the first super accurate marine chronometer.
Decades. Wow, what drove him to do that?
Well, Harrison understood the practical impact. He knew a good marine chronometer would save lives at sea by preventing shipwrecks, making navigation safer.
So it wasn't just a technical challenge, it was a humanitarian one too.
Exactly. And he came up with some amazing innovations like special bearings to reduce friction, using different metals to counteract temperature changes. He was all about precision.
So did his marine chronometer finally solve that longitude problem?
It did. His chronometer was tested on a voyage across the Atlantic in 1761. And get this, it lost less than 5 seconds over 10 weeks at sea.
5 seconds. That's incredible.
Yeah, it revolutionized seafaring. Sailors could finally figure out their position with way more confidence. Exploration became safer, global trade boomed, and Harrison, well, he got a big reward from the British government. They recognized how important his work was.
He definitely deserved it. Amazing how, wanting to tell time accurately at sea led to such a big breakthrough.
It shows you the power of, human ingenuity and persistence, and that spirit of innovation.
Yeah.
It kept driving the evolution of clocks.
So where do we go from the marine chronometer?
Well, from those super intricate mechanisms, we move into a new era, mass production. Clocks become more accessible, less about specialized craftsmanship.
Ah, so clocks for everyone.
Pretty much. In the early 1800s, a guy named Eli Terry in the U.S., he pioneered using interchangeable parts in clockmaking. It was like an early assembly line.
Wow, what a change from those handcrafted clocks.
It was. Terry's innovations made clocks way more affordable. They weren't just luxury items anymore. Ordinary people could have them in their homes.
So mass production brought clocks to the masses. But then, I'm guessing, another big change came along.
You guessed it. Electricity enters the picture.
Right. Electric clocks. How did those early ones work? Were they totally different from the mechanical ones?
Well, those first electric clocks, they still had gears and springs, the mechanical bits, but instead of weights or a spring powering them, they used electricity to rewind the spring or raise the weights.
Interesting. So it wasn't a sudden jump to a totally new technology,
Huh.
more like a blending of the old and the new.
Right. And then, of course, you had those synchronized clock systems. Remember seeing those in old movies, like all the clocks in a school or office perfectly in sync.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, those systems became really popular with electric clocks. One master clock would control a bunch of slave clocks throughout a building.
It's amazing how clocks went from those individual handcrafted objects to, shaping the rhythms of daily life for so many people.
It really is. But wait, there's more. We haven't even talked about the real precision champions, quartz and atomic clocks.
Ah, yes. Those are the clocks that really define precision in our modern world.
They do. Quartz clocks first. Early 20th century. They were revolutionary.
I remember getting my first quartz watch. It was so tiny, yet so accurate. What's the secret to that?
Quartz crystals. They vibrate at a very specific frequency when you pass electricity through them, and that vibration is super stable.
So it's like a tiny, naturally occurring tuning fork inside the watch.
Exactly. And that natural precision, it made quartz clocks a total game changer. Way more accurate than mechanical clocks. And much more affordable.
And then, of course, we have the ultimate timekeepers, atomic clocks.
The most accurate timekeeping devices we have, absolutely.
How do they even work?
Well, imagine a beam of atoms. Now, expose those atoms to microwaves in a really controlled environment. The atoms will absorb those microwaves at a very specific frequency. By measuring those frequencies, scientists can create a time standard that's unbelievably accurate.
Unbelievably accurate. Like, how accurate?
Think about this. An atomic clock would only lose or gain a few seconds over billions of years.
Wow. That's mind-blowing. So why don't we all have atomic clocks in our homes?
Well, they're incredibly complex and expensive to build, not exactly practical for everyday use. They're more like the guardians of time. They define the very second itself, and they're vital for scientific research.
So they're kind of like the unsung heroes of timekeeping, making sure our world stays on track, in a way.
I like that. Unsung heroes of time.
It's incredible to think how far we've come with clocks. From watching the sun and the stars to harnessing atoms to measure time. What a journey.
It really is a testament to human curiosity, our desire to understand this thing we call time.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the history of clocks, from ancient sundials to atomic clocks and everything in between. What a fascinating journey through time.
Absolutely. And who knows what amazing timekeeping innovations await us in the future.
I can't wait to find out. But for now, thanks for joining us on this episode of Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. Until next time, keep on exploring.